Clown World. Clown World, we got 4, 7 inverse trig functions. Can't get enough. Can't get enough. TL World. Actually, I got 2 kids, so third on the way. Alright, 4, 7. We're finally past all that grody graphing that we did in 4, 5, and 4, 6. Here in 4, 7, what we're going to be doing is we're actually going to be using that cute little button on your calculator. This says second and then sine, where you have your sine function, and it says sine to the -1. And some of you guys thought that was your inverse function, how to find your cosecant before. Not so much. Inverse trig functions are actually, what we're going to be doing with these is before we have found the sine of pi over 4. And so we've thought about our ordered pair at pi over 4, and the ordered pair, the sine is radical 2 over 2 comma radical 2, where your sine is just going to be radical 2 over 2. Well, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing the inverse here in 4, 7, and with the inverse, what you do is you say, well, I have the sine to the -1 of radical 2 over 2. And what you have to figure out is this pretty little radian value. So if you find the inverse of an exact value, that's going to give you a radian value. And that's what we're going to be dealing with here in 4, 7. So you're going to want to make sure that you remember your values around your circle. I know some of you may have forgotten those already. Don't forget them. Well, we have 3 inverse functions. The first one we're going to talk about is your inverse sine function. And it is restricted on your domain from -pi over 2 to pi over 2. So that means if you are on your circle, I find a nice little circle here. If you're on the circle, then you are restricted to these values from a -pi over 2 to a pi over 2. So you can only find your inverse sine in your first quadrant and your fourth. The reason is, if we go back to what we had here written at the beginning, if you want to find the arc sine or inverse sine of radical 2 over 2, where there's actually 2 points on your circle where your sine is a radical 2 over 2. You're here at this, whoops, over 2. You're here in the first quadrant. You're also in your second quadrant at the ordered pair negative radical 2 over 2 comma radical 2 over 2. So when we do it like this, when we restrict to just one quadrant, then that takes out this quadrant too. So it leaves some of the guessing out of your work. Now this is called your inverse sine function. Another way that it can be written and said, and you'll hear me say it a few times, is called the arc sine. Okay, the arc sine of x. You can also will see it written both ways. Y equals this inverse sine of x. So there is an inverse sine if and only if your sine of y is equal to x. So that means all your values of x are going to end up being between -1 and 1, and your y values have to be from -pi to pi over 2, which is going along here. Your domain, your x values are from -1 to 1. Your range is from -pi over 2 to pi over 2. So whenever you evaluate these things, what I always try to remember is you have to remember the phrase, the arc sine of x is the angle or the number whose sine is x. So if we have the, like I talked about before, if we have an arc sine of something, we're trying to find our actual rating value for that exact value. So if we look at example 1 here, if we're trying to find the arc sine of -1, so if you think about your circle, okay, you can only be on in these 2 quadrants from, whoops, I'll use a red here. You can only be in quadrant 1 to quadrant 2. So you're going to include all these values along here. Well, the only place that your sine value is -1 is down here. Now, we used to call this a 3 pi over 2. However, if you think about your values, this value has to be between a -pi over 2 and a pi over 2. So even though it's coterminal 3 pi over 2 is coterminal with negative pi over 2. You don't call this value a 3 pi over 2. The actual answer for this would just be a equal to negative pi over 2. And then that would be your solution. So we are trying to find what radian value does our x equal negative 1 at for our sine function. Same thing for b. Okay, if we're talking about our sine of b here, and we're going to try to find out where sine is equal to a 1/2. So your sine is equal to a 1/2. Well, if you only have 2 quadrants to choose from, your sines are positive in your first quadrant, they are negative in your fourth quadrant. So we have to be in our first quadrant. So here is important once again to figure out, well, what point am I talking about? Okay, I need to know my circle. Actually, I know mine. You guys need to know yours. So if you are on your circle, and you're going to be between here down to here, we actually know we're going to be in the first quadrant because we have to be positive. So our circle, our values, we have one at pi over 6, one at pi over 4, and one at pi over 3. At pi over 3, we are at the ordered pair, radical 3 over 2, 1/2. At pi over 3, sorry, this is pi over 6. At pi over 3, we are at 1/2 radical 3 over 2. So which one of these has a y value that is equal to a 1/2? Well, my friends, that would be here at pi over 6. So your answer for B is pi over 6. Remember, we are trying to find what radian value does our x, is our y value a 1/2. Now for the sine, the arc sine or the inverse sine of radical 3, this is a little bit different. What we're doing here for C is we have a radical 3. Well, if you think about your ordered pairs around your circle, okay, if we draw our circle, we have 1/2 comma radical 3 over 2, radical 3 over 2 comma 1/2. We have a radical 2 over 2 comma radical 2. We're trying to find some value where your y is equal to a radical 3. So where is Carmen Sandiego? Just kidding. Where is the sine of x that equals radical 3? So we're trying to find some value that's radical 3. Unfortunately, if we look back to the beginning here, x has to be between negative 1 and 1. So if you find out what the square root of radical 3 is equivalent to a 1.73, is 1.73 is that less than or equal to 1, but greater than or equal to negative 1. Thinking, how about no? How about no? This is not possible. So what happens is we end up and get a value that is not possible. So our actual answer that we have to write is not possible here for C. So that's how you find your inverse sine functions. We will continue working with the cosine next. And if you think about your cosine, well, our cosine is going to be where we just want our x value. So we'll see how well you do on example 2.